Thanks for joining me today. This is episode number 1 in the hardanger series. Um, Today, what we're going to do is go over what you need for supplies. We're going to go over the recommended thread for different counts of fabric. We're going to talk about scissors and needles and to hoop or not to hoop. So with that, let's get started. Okay. First of all, for the project that we're going to do, you're going to need, I believe I cut about an 8x8 piece of 22 count hardanger fabric. Okay. What we're going to, the project that we will make is a small ornament. For 22 count fabric, you're going to need some pearl cotton, and you can pick any color that you like. As you can see on the piece that I'm using for background, I prefer the traditional, which is ecru on ecru or white on white. That's my preference for stitching pieces. However, you don't have to do that. You can use any color. You can use variegated. You can use solid color. You can use really whatever color that you wish, something that coordinates with your room, or you can stick with the traditional. For teaching purposes on this video, I chose to go with a contrast between the fabric and the thread, which hopefully will make it a little easier for you to see. So for 22 count fabric, I chose DMC. It's number 115 is the color number, and this is pearl cotton number 8. Pearl cotton number 8 we will use for wrapping the bars and doing any decorative stitches that there might be on the fabric. So when I say bars, I'm referring to this part in here. Okay, these bars are wrapped and they contain dove's eyes. So that's one way to complete bars. But we're talking about the filling in the space where you cut and then have to do something with those threads that are remaining. So pearl cotton number 8 on size 22 count fabric is what we will be using. To do the cloister blocks, which is these parts here that outline the cut area, which are the foundation of hardanger embroidery. Everything is, pardon me, I have a raspy voice. Everything is based off of the cloister blocks. They're the foundation. They're what you work off of to complete your piece. And for that, on 22 count fabric, we're going to use pearl cotton size 5. Now, you can either buy this in a ball like this or in skeins like this. This project is not going to be that large, so I chose to just buy a skein of it. Number 8, I believe just comes in balls, but I could be wrong. It's been a while since I looked. My tendency was always to buy the ball because I did so much of it, and I was always doing white or ecru, so I would stock up. I'd actually buy it by the box at a time. So color of your choice. These can be the same, or if you want to choose to wrap your bars in a different color and your cloister blocks in it, you can do 2 different colors if that's what you'd like to do. And again, you can use solid or variegated. For 22 count fabric, I like bowhin needles. So you will need a 22 tapestry needle. You want a needle that's big enough to accommodate your thread without shredding it, um, and be able to thread it fairly easily. Now, one thing I did not mention about your pearl cotton is when you're choosing pearl cotton, your pearl cotton that you use should be your pearl cotton for your cloister blocks should be about the same thickness as the threads in your fabric. And that's one way to help to remember what size you're going to use for different count fabrics. Um, I already have a 22 needle out here, so I'm just going to stick that in there so that I don't lose it. Um, Really, right here is what you need: pearl cotton, fabric, a needle. If you would like to use a hoop, you can, although it is not necessary. Um, I do it both ways. It really does depend on my mood. I will say, if you use a hoop, which you certainly can do, you do not want to put your fabric in tight. The way I teach hardanger is to do it in a sewing motion. I find it easier that way. I find that you're less apt to make mistakes in the way that you do a cloister block. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into actual stitching. There are times, depending if I'm using doing a really big piece, that I will use a hoop to do the cloister blocks, just because it helps me manage the fabric better. One place you do not want to use a hoop is when you're cutting, because if you have your fabric stretched in a hoop when you cut, when you take it out of the hoop, what will happen is the ends of those threads will slip back too far into your cloister blocks, and there may be a tendency for things to not stay together as they should. So I don't recommend a hoop when cutting. And I do definitely, again, for ease of manipulating fabric and getting tension even, I will use a hoop for my needle weaving, because you want your bars to be straight, you don't want them to be overfilled, and by putting it in a hoop, I personally am better able to manage that. So for this project, these are the supplies you're going to need: an 8x8 piece of 22 count hardanger fabric. And the reason I chose that is because I think that's going to be the easiest to see, to learn on. Okay. The piece that I have laying here was actually done on 32 count Lugana. Again, that's my preference. I like it, the finer, more delicate look. 22 count is not quite as, for lack of a better way, delicate looking as the piece I have laying here. However, it's perfectly fine and wonderful. But for learning purposes, I think it will be easier for you to learn and be able to see what you're doing on the 22 count fabric. Okay, so that's the supplies. If you would gather them, I'm not going to post another video on this until next week, mainly because I will be out of town the end of the week and over the weekend, and won't be back till Sunday evening. So the next video where we do the cloister blocks will not be till next week, and we are going to stitch this piece together. So I am going to walk you through step by step and basically hold your hand as best I can until we get the piece done. Now, that being said, to let you know, I have done some write-ups for you, as well as some diagrams for you on what we will be doing for the sequence of the stitching. Okay, for you to follow along with as we go through making this ornament. I did them, trying to think ahead a little bit here, for right-handed people as well as for left-handed people. So I am going to make these available to you. All you have to do is email me, and I will put my email address right here down in the lower corner of this video, and I'll also put it at the end. Send me an email. In the subject line, put hardanger, and I will send you the link to a folder in my Dropbox that is shared, and it's shared just for those people that have the link. So I will email that back to you, and then you can go in there and download all the pages that I have put in there so that you have these available when we actually start to stitch. Okay, we'll talk about reading a chart when I do the next video, and those instructions are on here. And we'll talk about how to determine fabric size on that next video. So you can read these ahead of time. It's available for you. If you have downloaded this and you have questions about that, please put them in the comment section so that I can see what your questions are before I record the next video when I get back from my weekend excursion. And I'll make sure that everybody's understanding and we can move merrily along. So with that, I have on this, and as I said, you can print this off. It's the recommended threads for the different counts of fabric. 22 count fabric, you're going to use a size 5 and a size 8 pearl cotton. On 25 count, like 25 count Lugana, you're going to again use a 5 and an 8, because as I said, the thickness of the thread that you're stitching with should be very close to the thickness of the fabric that you're stitching on, because you want those cloister blocks to cover well on your fabric. On a 28 count, you're going to use size 8 for the cloister blocks, size 12 pearl cotton for the wrapping of the bars. And the same would be on 30 count, 32 count, 35 count. I personally have not really done anything smaller than that, although it could be done. And if you're doing things smaller that maybe you would need the size 12 for the cloister blocks, you can use embroidery floss or tatting cotton to wrap the bars. Okay, because you want it smaller so that you get the right effect with what you're stitching. Again, as I said, we'll learn how to read a chart when I do the next video, and how to figure out the size when I do the next video. Scissors, when it comes to the cutting, are very, very important. There's a lot of brands of scissors out there. There's DMC has scissors. I mean, there's just Premax scissors, Bohin scissors, Ginger scissors, Dovo scissors. There's all kinds. My personal preference is a Dovo. They have the longest, or I shouldn't say longest, they have the thinnest blades and the sharpest points. And especially when you get into using the lower count fabrics, that's exactly what you want. You want a thin blade and you want sharp points on your scissors. Okay, this is a pair of Wasa scissors, again another kind. They wouldn't be bad. They have a nice blade, and they are very sharp at the point. So this is something that you could use. I will tell you, Dovo makes, and it is a little expensive, and I would not purchase it unless hardanger is something that you're really going to get into and want to do a lot of, just mainly because of the price of the scissors. But Dovo does make a set of a scissor that's especially made for hardanger, and I believe there is a tweezers with it, because when you're pulling the threads out after you cut them, let me tell you, if you pull them out just by trying to use your fingers are going to get mighty sore, especially if you have a long thread that you need to pull. Even with short threads, you're going to be pulling a lot of them. So it does make it easier to use a tweezers. So that's something I would also recommend. Again, I'm not going to tell you a brand to buy. I can tell you that my favorite ones are Dovos. That's what I use. That's what I prefer. Again, they are expensive. They're pricey. So if this is something that you're just going to try and don't know if you really want to do or not, for 22 count, as long as you have a pair of scissors that's sharp, you'll probably be okay. If you get into it more, you're going to want to buy a very good pair of scissors in order to do this. And my personal recommendation is the Dovo. I will let that up to you. I can just say what I would prefer. We talked a little bit about a hoop. To use a hoop or not to use a hoop, that's really your preference. Again, you want to keep it short. You want to keep your fabric loose within the hoop, because we're going to do this as a sewing method. If people stick and stab, what I find they do is your cloister blocks are made up of satin stitches, okay? Depending on your satin stitch, you might come up, count your 4 threads down, go down, jump over to the next hole, go back up, jump over to the next hole, come back down, jump over to the next hole, go back up. Okay? In hardanger embroidery, if you do that, once you cut, your piece is going to fall apart. Okay? In hardanger embroidery, when you're doing those 5 satin stitches to make that cloister block, you're going to want to come up, count down your 4, go down, and come up again, up at the top, and go down, so that you're actually making that loop around in the back of your fabric. That's what keeps your piece together. So that's very important. There are people that put their pieces in Q-snaps, depending on the size, and they do the stick and stab method, and that is okay. as long as you remember that you want that satin stitch on the back as well as on the front of your work. Okay? It's you will again find your preference. Okay? I'm going to teach you how I do it. There are other ways out there. There, as in anything else, there are many means to an end. And in this case, the end is all the same. You know, you want a beautiful project. And how you get there is your own individual preferences on how to do things. I'm going to teach you how I do it. One other thing I will say about a hoop. If you're going to use a hoop, I would suggest you get one of the wooden hoops. This is a Hardwick Manor hoop, and I have wrapped the inside hoop. I believe it's Mary Corbett that has a tutorial on how to wrap a hoop. If you just Google wrapping an embroidery hoop, it should come up for you. I think it actually might be on YouTube, but I'm not 100% sure about that. It's not difficult to do. It's just getting everything tight so that it stays in place. And then what you will do is you'll sew it on the inside here so that it doesn't unravel for you. But it's a good idea to do that. And the big thing is you don't want to use like the Susan Bates plastic hoops that have the lip. That's really going to get in your way. It's going to crush your stitches, and I do not recommend them. I highly recommend you get a wooden hoop and use that. Two other things that you might, or at least one other thing that you might want to look at, and I ask you please excuse the condition of this book. This is Janice Love's Hardanger Basics and Beyond. As you see, mine is kind of falling apart. This one's actually signed by Janice. I got this back in October 26, 1990, just to show you how old it is. But as far as Hardanger reference books out there, this is the one to have. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. She has, it's excellent. It's excellently written. It gives you things to know. It gives you how to do the stitches. I will say this. In this book, she teaches you to start. It's basically at the bottom of your design and work upward. Okay? Which is perfectly okay. Again, there are certain things that there's no right and wrong way. However, the way I learned and the way I find it most comfortable and the way I'm going to teach you, and that's why I drew diagrams to help you through the sequence, is I start at the top and work towards myself. I think it makes it easier. So that is one thing that you will find different from the way I teach you and what is in this book. But she teaches you about cloister blocks, how to start and end threads. And we're back. I kind of got cut off. My phone rang and it stopped my video. So I believe I was talking about Janice Love's Hardanger Basics and Beyond book. And yes, I highly, highly, highly recommend this. If you don't buy any other book, this is the one to buy. The last I knew, I bought this one from Nordic Needle years and years and years ago. I would check with them if they still have it. I do know that their bricks and mortar shop has closed. They still are selling via the internet, but in all honesty, I don't know how long that's going to last. I kind of get the feeling, just by what I have seen on the website, that that's also probably not going to be open that much longer. So I would check that if I were you, and if you're interested in this book, as soon as possible, to see if you can still get a copy. In the meantime, until the next video, I will do some searching and see if there's any other places that it can be purchased, because seriously, folks, this is a book you're going to want to have. The other book that goes along with that and is also excellent is called Fundamentals Made Fancy. It's also by Janice, and it also gives you instructions on more stitches, more of the fancy stitches, different kinds of needle weaving that can be done in your open work areas. So this is another book that, if you can get a hold of it, I would highly recommend you get it. Both these books, if I remember correctly, are around $20 a piece. But I'm going to tell you, it is $20. Very, very, very well spent. As I said, I'll do some research, see if I can find someplace else that they can be purchased, and check if Nordic Needles still has them. So with that, just to reiterate, send me, and I will put my email down in the section where I can put information so that you can get it there. I'll also put it on the screen, and I'll also put it at the end of this video. If you send me an email with the word hardanger in the subject, I will send you the link to get into my shared folder on Dropbox, so that you can download the charts that I have there. The chart for the project that we're going to be stitching is there. The papers that I was showing you in this video are in there. Download what you wish. You are welcome to it. It is my gift to you. My email is klbugg@gmail.com. So just send me that. Send me your email, and I will get that link out to you. Next week we'll make the next video, and or I'll make the next video, and we will start stitching this piece. We are going to stitch it together. I'm going to walk you through step by step, hold your hand as best I can through videos to get you to a completed project. When we get to the cutting, we're going to cut together, and I'll give you some little tips on how to make sure that you're cutting right. Is it scary? Sure it is. That first cut is the scariest, but we will get through it. We will get through it together. I hope you enjoy doing this type of embroidery. In all honesty, this was all I did for about 10 years. So, and then I came back to cross stitch. But I love doing it. It's a very portable project. You can take it with you anywhere, because really all you have to carry is your pearl cotton and your piece. Put it in a bag. Off you go. Yes, there are charts out there. However, I'm going to tell you another little secret. You don't need a chart. You can stitch from a picture. So, for example, if you see, say you go on Pinterest and you see somebody did this doily and you really, really like it, and they put a nice close-up picture there, In all honesty, that's all you need. You can count the number of cloister blocks on each or each length. And once you have the basic shape, you can do what you want. Do you have to put what's there? No. You can change this. You can put anything you want in here. And these are stars and ships. That's a whole nother thing after you learn the basics. When we get through the basics, if you want more, we can certainly look into that and go that place. You know, you can make more decorative designs. Looks like I'm losing my light here. It's getting darker outside. You can make, put ships around, put some diamonds in the middle. This stitch in between here is called a faggot stitch. Not hard to do, just another way to fancy your piece up. This one doesn't have it. You can put eyelets in these cloister blocks. You can really do whatever you want. This one is my own. I took the basic shape from a book that I had, and I filled everything with my own interpretation of how to fill the blocks. I mean, it's endless. It is a lot of simple stitches with just a lot of opportunity to make it your own. So I'm going to end that here. I'm going to give you the opportunity to get your supplies. We're going to start this next week. Send me an email. I will get you the stuff. You'll be able to download the information that I've put there, and we'll take it from there, and this will be a journey together. So don't be afraid. So folks, thank you for allowing me the privilege of your time. Happy stitching, and most of all, find your joy.